Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. And welcome to Techstrong Learning, brought to you by AWS and JFrog. My name is Cody, and I'd like to welcome you back. We do have an exciting program ahead with a frequent flyer, Bill Manning, but before we get that started, I do have just a couple of housekeeping notes I'd like to cover. First off, today's session is being recorded. So if you miss any of our discussion, perhaps you'd like to rewatch or maybe share with a friend. The on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude this live session today. If you'd like to engage with us, there are a couple of options for you to do so. The first option is the chat tab, which can be found on the right side of your screen. And I'd like you to go ahead and start testing out that chat tab for me by letting us know from where in the world you are from. If you have any specific questions, we do want you to send those to the Q&A tab, as that just helps us keep track of those questions. So again, any questions, send them to that Q&A tab and we'll address them as soon as we can. Also, before we close things out today, we will be giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So be sure to stick around for the duration of our program. So our topic is securing your software supply chain with JFrog and AWS. And I'm joined today by William Manning, Solutions Engineer Manager at JFrog. Bill, thanks so much for joining me on Techstrong Learning. Would you like to go ahead and take it away from here?
Hey, Cody, thank you so much. I always appreciate you, and I'm so glad to see you again. Always warms my heart. So as stated, I'm William Manning, or Bill Manning, however you want to call me. You can follow me on Twitter at William Manning, where I do voice a lot of my opinions. But today we'll be talking about the securing the software supply chain. And the thing is that, the software supply chain, that people talk about, and there's lots of webinars, there's lots of talks, there's a lot of awareness around this. It just feels like this, right? Because it's a constant thing, right? We're always trying to fix, we're always trying to make sure that we're safe and secure with the software that we build. Because you got to remember, 85 to 90% of the things you build are other people's software. And knowing your software supply chain really, really is something that everybody should be aware of, and every company should also make a mandate internally to make security one of their top priorities. And as stated, because 85 to 90% of that software is someone else's software, I always like to start off with this interesting quote that I always get, which is every time you do a pip install, like go get a Maven fetch, or you're doing the equivalent of basically finding a thumb drive that you found on the sidewalk and plugging it into your production server, right? First time I heard this quote, I laughed so hard because I said, oh my God, it's terrible, but it's so true. So with software supply chain, the thing is, it's an ongoing effort. No matter how much you try to stop it, no matter how much you try to prevent it and do everything you can, it's a constant influx of just things, of just nefarious and malicious things coming your way all the time. And we see these headlines consistently. Every single day, there's something coming up. And, it can be overwhelming. And one of the things is always making sure you have the right tool sets, the right mentality, the right attitude. You bake this into your process. And we'll talk about some of this today. Because vulnerabilities are actually costing companies more money than they really expect. I mean, the thing is that think about, we have a thing here which is called innovate more and remediate less. And the idea is simple, is that, companies are spending an amazing amount of, operational, capital on trying to fix these. Like, how many developers does it take? How much time and effort does it take to address security flaws, vulnerabilities, issues, and things like that? Does it delay releases? Does it, put you in jeopardy of ruining, gardening your reputation and potentially financial impacts? But also, too, the bottom line is that companies are spending millions upon millions of dollars every year trying to address vulnerabilities and third-party issues. And then just to give you an idea, just in 2022 alone, last year, there were 21,000 new CVEs. And just so you understand, so when we speak about authority here at JFrog, if you're not familiar with who we are the Universal Biorepository Manager, which I'll talk about all that kind of goodness in a bit. We are a CNA. We are a CVE number authority. We actually have a massive research team that goes ahead and produces CVEs and adds more information to existing CVEs. And we're doing our part as a company. And our company, just so you know, we have almost, we're coming on 7,500 corporations globally, 90+% of the Fortune 100, top 10 banks, auto manufacturers. I always make the joke, from Chick-fil-A to SpaceX, we have it all. And the thing is that, the increases are it's increasing all the time. These software attacks, 650% increase in the supply chain attacks in 2020 alone. A lot of that had to do with the pandemic, people getting bored. The thing is software supply chain is easy to infiltrate. I mean, we're very accepting as a community. People want to contribute and do their things, but instead of going down, it went up. It went up from there. So it's like, it's just this constant avalanche of vulnerabilities and malicious things that we're constantly having to be aware of. And that can get really annoying, right? Because we want to, let's face it, whenever I talk about coders, right? I always, I came from coding. I've been doing this for a long time. I actually had a webinar picture, like one of my previous ones, where I showed me from, starting off way back in the late 90s. Obviously, I'm definitely older. I represent the 50 plus crowd of developers and all that kind of stuff. But the thing is that coders are artists, right? And these software supply chain, these third-party transitive dependencies are the medium that we use to create the art that we create. And the thing is that, how do you make sure you don't have lead paint, or, like the colors you're using are the right colors, that they haven't been infiltrated, and you're using some sort of spoofing or things like that. These are like common questions that we constantly have to ask ourselves as developers, as organizations. I mean, it's amazing just the sheer magnitude of things that are happening. And at JFrog, we're taking this ultimate approach of the idea of it's an end-to-end platform. And I'll show you an example of that in a bit. The idea that any of those third-party transitive dependencies you have, one of the things is, we call it the blessed repository. And very soon, we're actually going to be offering a service called curation, where we're actually going ahead and even before even gets into your environment, we're working with binary providers to make sure that there is a safe and secure option. The thing is, we also, I give a lot of talks and a lot of information on how to automate a lot of these things, such as even security evaluations, automating those third-party transit dependency evaluations, everything from the developer all the way to the device or code to cloud or whatever your company says. And bringing this also to things, as a hybrid and multi-cloud deployments. We've given webinars talks before, with AWS, and the idea of being able to take, a lot of companies are going through digital transformation. I love that terminology. That just means a lot of companies are starting to look at using cloud as opposed to their, dedicated data centers, and using our solution as a way to migrate those and a way to maintain and manage the builds they produce and third-party transit dependencies. Be able to have a hybrid model for a while, or maybe go full cloud. Really, it's up to you. And the thing is our tool grows with your organization. As I mentioned, there's a reason why we have almost 7,500 customers utilizing us at any given time, because we can actually approach multiple dependent industries that are out there, and we provide them with a trusted and secure environment. On top of that, we also maintain and manage all the packages, those third-party transit dependencies, and the builds that companies create. We have over 32 package types that we support natively right out of the box. And the other thing, too, is we've been universal from day one. So we integrate across the board. And one of the integrations we're going to talk about today is how, with our security offering that we have, JFrog Security, with our X-Ray product, and the new thing we're going to talk about today called Advanced Security, how you can take all that information and even integrate that into things like, like AWS Security Hub, right? And I'll show you that towards the end. And understanding that, the benefits are really out there, right? I mean, and we'll talk about that too, because we actually too have a study that was just done recently about the ROI of our product in organizations. And I'm not going to lie, we were extremely ecstatic the way that happened. But on top of that, when we talk about managing your software supply chain, you need to look through the entire process, right? You have your developer who develops, who grabs, third-party transitive dependencies from third-party repos. NPM projects use NPM.js. Docker is pulling from Docker Hub. Python is pulling from pip. Terraform, and you can go through. I mean, a multitude. And then what they do is you're going to take the developer. The developer is going to go ahead and they're going to build all the things that they build, and they're going to go ahead and release it. They're going to QA test it and distribute the software, whether it's going to devices, whether it's going to a web service, whatever they're doing, whatever the end consumption point is. When they're doing it, this is the standard end-to-end process that pretty much everybody goes through. But where in this flow are all the susceptible attacks? Where are the potential threats that could, potentially threaten your organization, both by reputation, which could be also directly correlated to things like financials, like your revenue and things like that? Well, the sad part about it, it's pretty much the entire flow. right? It's from the public repositories containing malicious or third-party transit dependencies to miscoding by the developer. We always see these with things like static code analysis. By the way, this is something that is going to be coming to JFrog very soon. On top of that, too, configuration is another thing. This could be when we look at this lower line, maybe incorrect configurations and things like that, or secret management. On top of that, we start looking at other exploits. We have malicious packages, which we'll talk about today. We have zero-day exploits. The standard CVEs, and you can also throw CVSS scores in there, right? Because CVSS scores are also directly correlated with CVEs. Secrets, misconfigurations, bad binaries, and even even all the way down to production, right? You are susceptible through the entire software delivery and development process from end to end. It's terrifying when you think about that. Now think about the security posture you have, right? You have to maintain a security posture to identify all these. Now, the thing that's good about this is what I'm going to show you today with our platform. Because when we talk about the software supply chain platform from the JFrog perspective, we have Artifactory, our universal binary repository manager, and maintains and manages those 85 to 90% of the things you use to build your software. And that's the curation side of this, right? Your developers go in, they pick the libraries that best fit the project they're working on. I'm not going to go write an entire thing to parse a string where I might just find a library that parses a string and returns the values that I need. And the thing is that we store the builds that you create. We can emulate your SDLC, your software development lifecycle, dev, QA, staging, and production. And we provide access controls for all of that. On top of that, one of the key features of this is the way we store the binaries. And the reason why I'm telling you this is it directly affects the speed and the accuracy in which our X-ray product works, our security, vulnerability, and license compliance tool. Artifactory stores the binaries as a checksum, meaning that every binary is represented by metadata, and that metadata has all the context of that binary, and you can add additional metadata on top of it to make it more relevant. Now, this metadata is actionable. I actually I'm giving a talk today later on, another webinar I'm doing, about how to use the metadata that we have in Artifactory to improve the way you automate by using one of our things called AQL, the Artifactory query language, to make your builds faster and also more precise. But the other reason why I'm telling you about the checksum-based approach is that same metadata that represents all the context of all the things that you use and utilize or build is the thing that our X-ray product uses for its evaluation. So it's a metadata to metadata comparison. I have the things I want to evaluate, which is represented on metadata on one side, and our X-ray product has a database that is actually curated by our security team. I did mention we were a CNA. So it's your standard NIST sources, your NVD sources. We have a relationship with RBS, Risk-Based Security, the largest proprietor of vulnerability data, and our research team. And we munch that all together, and we send that down to our X-ray product once a day. And by the way, in zero-day circumstances, we actually have it update multiple times, like when Log4j came out. We updated constantly throughout the day, providing the most accurate and the most efficient and the most relevant information to our customers. But this also means a couple of things and a couple of benefits. First of all, speed. Because it is metadata to metadata, it means it's constant too, right? So it means it's also extremely fast and extremely efficient. And when I said constant, that was on purpose because of the fact that most security tools out there are reactionary. You have to do something. You have to enact some sort of action for it to do what it does. In this case, it takes a cue from Artifactory. So when your thing gets uploaded into Artifactory, it gets immediately updated by X-ray to go ahead and evaluate it based on rules and things that you create. But on top of that, it's constant. So it's consistently actually monitoring and evaluating those third-party transitive dependencies. And when a new library, a new database comes in, it goes through. So you have constant security. You hear about CI all the time. Continuous security, integration. You hear about CD, continuous delivery or deployment, and then you hear about CS, which is continuous security. And we follow this, and the reason why I brought that up is because this is the creation portion, right? So developers are pulling in those third-party transitive dependencies from public repositories. We're caching them. We're evaluating them with X-ray. But we're also providing security tools down to the developer level, such as we have an ID plugin for, say, IntelliJ, Eclipse, Visual Studio, VS Code. So they get all the relevant information where it matters most. just so you know, any security tool that you're utilizing, the ROI in terms of development is actually takes place the greatest at the IDE level or at the developer level. The most expensive is when you get into production. It's 100 times more expensive to fix anything in production than it is at the developer level. But we also have our JFrog CLI tool, which allows us to go in and actually do audits, and I'll show some of that today. And also, too, we can integrate this into our CI environment. So JFrog, we have our pipelines product, which is our CI, CD, and CI orchestration tool. But it could be any tools. Like today, I'll be demonstrating Jenkins. It could be GitHub Actions. It could be Travis CI or Circle CI, or even Azure DevOps. Right. The thing is that we've built this solution into any of the things that you use. We realize that our development team, we use what we use, but every single company is different. And out of all the companies, I've been here for almost 7 years now, every company I work with is completely different and no two are the same. But we extend the security model also down to our consumption side. So we have distribution, which actually is like a hub and spoke model. You actually have the centralized distribution hub, and then we have these little edge nodes that you can install in different regions in AWS. You can actually do a hybrid one where you can actually do AWS and maybe a data center. But it's a way to distribute your software both to the public, right? So you have customers that want to download their software from you. It's a way to separate your production and manufacturing from, actually having it, for deployment. You can use it to deploy web services. So you can actually use a thing we have called a release bundle. And a release bundle is a way to package up like Helm charts and Docker images and say Terraform templates if you're building a web service, whatever. But it's a way to actually take and build an immutable package of multiple software types and treat it as a release, and then give you the ability to actually distribute it out. And they're digitally signed, meaning we also have the ability to even do offline or air-gapped distribution, where if you do transfer something via air-gapped, we can use the signed release bundle as a way to test its validity. We also have Connect, which is our IoT platform, and we actually have security go all the way down to there, where we even do firewall monitoring and even services monitoring, and also allows you to do direct updates to devices that we have in the field. It's an MDM and also remote diagnostics. So the thing is that we handle the curation, the creation, and the consumption for organizations. And the thing is that one of the key factors here that I'll show you in a little bit is also the fact that when we do have all of these components, you have the traceability and trackability, so you can do things like root cause analysis reports if something does go horribly wrong. We also have software bill of materials if you need to supply that to your customers as part of your regulation if you're in a regulated environment. We are going to be bringing curation also to out very soon. You'll hear about imminent release around that. We're going to be bringing also static code analysis to even enhance our X-Ray plugin right now, even more, because right now we're doing component analysis. And in the future, we're also going to have runtime analysis too. But I don't want to take away from my marketing stuff, so we'll go ahead and we'll discuss that at another time. Now, X-Ray itself, right, our standard X-Ray product has software bill of materials. It has the ability to go ahead and detect licensing, right? So this means that you can go in and look at the licensing that you have, and this is actually usually a good key indicator on, is there something malicious inside? One of my favorite under discussed things that we actually do in our X-Ray product that I love tremendously is this one in the middle called operational risk. What is operational risk? Well, just to let you know, actually, I'll go back for that. Just to let you know, 75% of the third-party transit dependencies, both direct and indirect, most of them are indirect, are old and outdated or have been abandoned. So what we do is you actually provide information. Is these libraries using end of life? What's the version age of the actual libraries they're doing? What are the number of versions that are from the ones that are actually from the ones after the one you're using, and what's the health of the open source project? Has it been abandoned? Is nobody updating this? And to be honest, most of the libraries that are out there are not going to be updated. And why is that important? Well, say you find a bug, and it was released in 2008, which I did find that recently in an NPM project. There's a really, really solid chance it's not going to be updated. Right? It's not going to be fixed. So you're probably going to want to look for an alternative. We also have the idea of being able to detect malicious packages. Now, with malicious packages, one of the things about that is the ability for you to go in and actually, see the component details. And I'll show an example of that in a little bit. And then lastly, vulnerabilities, CVEs, right? This is the 650% increase in 2021, 40% from there in 2022. These are the 85 to 90% of the things you consume as an organization. Now, saying that, with software bill of materials, this is a thing that we see a lot with companies these days, especially with the U.S. government. There was a mandate in 2021 the Biden administration finally addressed. I mean, let's face it. Everybody knows about SolarWinds. I'm not going to go into it. People have talked about it ad nauseum. I've talked about it ad nauseum. But that was really the catalyst for the U.S. government to say, hey, if you work with us, you need to provide us with a software bill of materials, which is just the contents. And just so you know, I've given tons of webinars on this talk, but we support both CycloneDX and SPDX formats. On top of that, too, by the way, like I said, the vulnerabilities, we'll talk about that. I'll talk about the information that we provide, by the way, as an organization. So we have enhanced research materials that we've done. Licensing, as I mentioned before, this is a way to make sure, usually a key indicator might be a couple of things that, like such as standard licensing that we have, where somebody might use an unknown license or things like that. But I'm going to show you an example of that in a little bit. Of course, malicious packages. The thing is our X-ray catalog that we use for our evaluation has 165,000 malicious packages, and we're adding more every month. I talked about operational risk. And the thing is that we can make policies based on this, right? For malicious packages, vulnerabilities. One of the things we'll talk about is exposures. Also licensing, banned and allowed and unknown licenses. You can also define what your risk level is when you want to do this. And also go ahead and do things like failed builds, create JIRA tickets. One of my favorites is we also have the ability to hook into things like MS Teams or MS Teams or Slack, where you can actually get direct notifications, or JIRA or things like that. And getting that notifications and that information is pretty essential to every organization so they can combat it the most. Now, as I mentioned, with malicious packages, one of the things that we've done recently is that we've improved and increased the way we can actually go ahead and find malicious packages. We've improved our X-ray product tenfold over the past 2 years alone, and I couldn't be more excited about it. So I'm actually going to go log in while I talk about this to kind of show you an example of like what a malicious package looks like and how we can go ahead and fix that. Because let's face it, recently, like I said, we do have our JFrog research team, right? We are a CNA, and while that's loading, one of the things that I just wanted to show you is that if you get a chance, just go to research.jfrog.com. We're constantly publishing information around issues and vulnerabilities and whatnot. And just recently alone, just so you know, we actually found a bunch of .NET packages. Like here's one for Impala Stealer, which is came in as a NuGet package. We also just found another NuGet package over the past couple of months. It's really funny that for a long time NuGet was kind of safe, quote unquote safe, but it really wasn't. But at the same time, we have been finding these, and like I said, go to research.jfrog.com, and research.jfrog.com has tons of great information and helpful advice that you can go ahead and utilize, to figure out things. But I'll just give you a quick example. Let me just show you an example of a malicious package that I found. You can see where we're actually exposing it. And what's nice is that in this case, this just happens to be a Python package. We include here's the public source information, the CV information, vulnerability information. But at the same time, we also give you all the essentials on what you need to go and repair. And of course, this one just happens to be just do a pip uninstall, and that should take care of it. But these are the kind of things that we're detecting for a lot of companies now. And we like to be able to provide information back to the public. This is our chance to give back as a part of the organization. Now, I want to talk about our next thing, though. We just released a couple months ago our advanced security features. Now, advanced security is absolutely mind-blowingly amazing. We're going to show you things. I'm going to show you contextual analysis. Contextual analysis is my favorite thing right now. I absolutely adore it. I think it's such a game changer for corporations. It's insane when I do my demo. Also, secret detection. You would be surprised how many secrets I found. Just to give you an idea, I scanned a Docker image. I typed into Google Docker Python host. And I found the number one Docker image to host Python applications that I wanted to test with. I took it and I actually pulled it into Artifactory because we are a secure Docker registry, and I'm show you some benefits behind that too. And what's nice is I scanned it and I found a ton of secrets, and they were located in the root host. I contacted the developer who put the actual one into Docker Hub. I let him know that I found all his AWS keys. I found a bunch of secrets. I found a whole bunch of stuff in there, and it was all in his history. He's like, oh my God, I thought I cleaned it up, but it looks like it was still in his history, and we detected those. We also will find application exposures or application misuse. Are you using Nginx and you're not enforcing TLS or things like that? Also, service misconfigurations. This can be one too, right? Say you have a service running, an API in the background, and you're using some sort of proxy format, and you're not enforcing restrictions, or you have weak passwords, or you're not, shoring up the services when you're doing it, which could potentially lead to exposures. We're detecting that also. And then lastly, with Terraform, taking so much center stage now in most, DevOps communities, we also do infrastructure as code analysis. We can actually go ahead, and I can just show you that actually quickly. One of the things that we're doing now is that we're taking things like the state files and we're exposing any sort of potential threats in there. So when I look here under, in this case, this just happens to be a scan of a Terraform state file. And by the way, this is I'll admit to my dumb stupidity here. So when I was first, this is actually an old one that I was using, and I actually went in and I went through the tutorials on how to do ACLs, right? How to do access controls when using Terraform to do things. And in this case, I went through and none of my ACLs were taking, and I was going crazy. And I was like, oh my God, what did I do wrong? Well, I forgot to remove authorization none. Yes, rookie mistake, and I learned. But we provided the information to me so I can go ahead and take a look and see, what did I do wrong? How can I go in and adjust this? So, the reason why I'm showing you this now is because I want to deeper dive into the other stuff, but just to let you know, we're doing infrastructure as code scanning also along with this. So understanding all those pieces and components, we now took all this amazing things that we already had inside of X-Ray, and we've gone tenfold up because we took the information from our security and research team, right? 1,600, plus malicious packages that we found. We're doing 500 zero-day vulnerabilities so far. We're also releasing, we actually have a whole bunch of security tools that we released over time. We are constantly, our security team, I cannot thank them enough. And at the same time, the amount of details they put into our advanced security is actually mind-blowing. And the thing is that the big thing I want to talk about, and I mentioned my favorite, and we're going to go do a dive into it just so I can kind of show you, is the idea of contextual analysis. And what contextual analysis is really interesting. And what we did is that when we first released the idea, when we first started building all the contextual analysis component, and what that means is that, just so you're aware what context means, is that every library you has functions, right? Both direct and indirect. And in most cases, you have no insight into those indirect transitive dependencies that you bring in that are associated to the primary libraries that you implicitly stated that you want to use. But those libraries all have functions, and those functions could be one function does one thing. I mean, look at LeftPad, right? If anybody's an NPM developer and you go back in time and you look at the disaster that was LeftPad, that took down, what it was like 73% of the sites on the internet because of a disgruntled person, but had one function in it. But most of them have more than one function, 10, 20, 30, and 100. And the thing is that if there's one function bad inside of a library and you're not using it, do you get rid of it? What we did is we actually went out and we actually, built this contextual analysis scanner, and it's constantly evolving. It's constantly growing. It's a whole series of scanners. I could always do a deep dive breakdown of what that means in the future. But the idea is is that we scan it, and if you're not using those functions, do you get rid of the CV? Do you actually get rid of the library because it's not really affecting you? And that's the thing. Is it applicable to the usage? Is the issue applicable? And when we ran our analysis against a ton of Docker Hub images, we actually found out that 78% of the CVEs reported were really not exploitable. They were just libraries that just happened to be there or, and happened to come along for the ride. And one of the things that we show in our product, of course, is the idea of impact analysis. Is this impacting you? And we show that, at what level dependency is it? Is the first level or implicit, or is it the seventh level transitive dependency? And also too, is that dependency associated to other dependencies? Because there are codependency models. But the thing is that we're also detecting, like I said, secret detection, right? We're using a whole bunch of different patterns. We're also looking to go ahead and eliminate a lot of false positives. We're actually doing an amazing job of accuracy. And this is one of the parts that I'm super happy and impressed with the way our product has turned out. And at the same time, the thing is we started to go out and do a whole bunch of real world testing. Like I said, we found and discovered tons of stuff. These are real world information on, we went out and we looked and we scanned everything from NPM to Python to Crate, right? And Ruby. And these are some of the, just a small segment of the things that we found when we just pulled raw binaries, libraries and containers and whatnot off the internet. It was actually unfathomable. How many secrets are constantly being exposed and how absolutely ludicrous and dangerous that is as a whole. So with all that stuff I just talked about, here's the little fluffy bits, that I need to talk about. We are very happy. Forrester just recently did and this is like, we're talking like the ink is still wet when they sent this to us, but we have a 393% return on investment, right? The ROI for our product from end to end, right? From developer to deployment, code to cloud. We provide an absolutely solid way for you to maintain, manage your builds, your dependencies, and make sure that your organization is as safe and secure as possible throughout the entire SDLC. And saying that, here's the dollar values, right? We actually helped accelerate delivery times, right? One of the things that I give classes on, and actually, like I said, I'm actually doing a Get to Kubernetes webinar right after this. But the idea is how do you automate? How do you remove a lot of the human roadblocks that can actually, help or actually most of the time hinder your release cycles? So we actually provide information, how to use metadata, how to expedite. We have a promotion API that allows you to promote your builds through the cycle so you can retain the atomic unit. And, and the amount of automation and stuff, we've actually saved a ton of money for organizations just by going ahead and pointing out the vulnerabilities and the context and everything on how companies are using it. And, one of the things that I'm going to show you in a bit is the fact that I had a guy, I taught him best practices last year, and I caught up with him 4 months after I showed him the best practice because he was a security guy, and his biggest complaint was his root cause analysis report. He goes, "You guys are giving us a tremendous amount of information. You're giving us a tremendous amount of data, and it's become really invaluable because before us, being able to look at an issue when an issue did arise with a third-party library or a base level image or something, used to take him days and weeks to compile the information just to produce a report that he could present. Now, 4 months later, they were using us. They had actually already onloaded about 45% of their jobs. I caught up with him to say, hey, how are those best practices working out for you? And his response was, he's like, Bill, my root cause analysis reports, like I said, used to take days and weeks. You've now, with the best practice that we have, I can at least get the rudimentary data that I need to build my reports within minutes and hours. And I'll show you that. If you're a security person watching right now and you have to fill those out, trust me, when you see this, you're going to go, oh, man, that's pretty cool. So saying that, let's just go dive in and let's look at some of the things that I want to talk about today. So first of all, I want to go in and I'm going to show you, and I actually happen to be here. This is a scan list that I'm working with. I'm actually in a Docker repository, just so you know. This is actually our JFrog Artifactory product. So here's Artifactory, here's X-Ray, here's our distribution and pipelines. We provide a unified experience for our customers, which is something they tremendously appreciate because we provide so much information and so much data. And each one of these components, by the way, is independently scalable on its own. But when you use it holistically or use it as a whole, this allows you to address more things and also to have better cycles, being able to have better deployment models, increase the velocity of your SDLC. But let's look at this for a minute, right? So I have one, this is my production repository for Docker. I have a whole bunch of Docker images in here, and we're going to go from here back to my registry because I want to show you some things. But this I'm going to show you. Here's one, Docker app 150. So if I did a Docker pull, it would be Docker app 150. It has 649 violations. It has no malicious packages. And we're immediately letting you know that there's 296 violations, 296 CVE violations. And we have 6 service level exposures. Well, let's go dive right into the container. And the first place I want to go actually is I'm going to show you the vulnerabilities. Now, as I stated, this container has a tremendous amount of vulnerabilities. So actually it has 295 vulnerabilities. Actually, one must have been, I see something spinning in the background. I think we're actually in the middle of an evaluation, which is awesome. But what I'm going to tell you right now is that our contextual analysis looks through every single piece of this Docker container, this image, everything we have here. And if you look here, you can see here's all my CVEs. Now I ask every customer the same thing. I say, how long, how many man hours, how much, delayed releases, all the things that take time, effort, and money is it going to take you to investigate, not even remediate, not even do a big detailed analysis, but just investigate whether or not you are being affected by it. 290, and I'll tell you, most people I talk to, when they say that, they're like, I don't know, we'll probably ignore it, or it's going to take it, end of year, or that's a lot. Now think about that. This is one release, one. Now I'm releasing every day, every hour, whatever. It doesn't matter. The velocity is every company is different, but velocity is increasing. So just to kind of give you an idea quickly, I can tell you that I have a whole bunch here that are applicable, but 74% of these CVEs that I have here are not applicable, meaning that they're bogus. They do not affect me, that these will not affect the usage. I just got rid of 74% of the things I need to investigate. And we tell you what we do is we look at the public source. I'm giving the quick lowdown on this. We look at the public source. Our contextual analysis engine grabs the context, puts it into our contextual analysis engine. And then we go, hey, by the way, just so you know, you're not using these things. You're not using this component. But if you needed to, you could always go ahead and update, right, versions, and I'll just get rid of it. Or you can go in and fix it yourself, but you're not applicable. I wouldn't worry about it. But also, too, just so you know, I'll show you in this case, I can show you where it's located. And this happens to be a jar in a jar of a layer of an image of a build. But what about the ones that are applicable? Well, here we go. Where I could actually go in, we get one with has our JFrog data. So you see this little icon? That means our JFrog security team said, this is important enough. We should look at it. Once again, here we go. Here's the, terrible CVE. This one doesn't present a lot of information, but once again, I can show you right here. Here is the actual issue. I can address it right away. I just can knock this out of the park. And you can see why we found it. And also, too, we provide you with the remediation. And we provide you with the level of detailed analysis on what we did to fix, to look at it. Think about that. So 74%, probably another 10% that I can put on top that I can investigate. But now, what about the ones that if I switch here, I'll show you. Here's another set that I have. And like I said, this is a lot. It says undetermined. And undetermined just really means that I can't determine if I'm being affected or not. What do I do? Well, that's actually where other things come into play. So I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to switch to another application to kind of show you. And in this case, I'm going to share with you my IDE. So I mentioned we have the IDE plugins in this case. Now, in this case, I am building a CV. In this case, this is an NPM project actually that I'm building. And here's my package.json, right? My third-party transitive dependencies that I have. And in this case, I can go ahead and see the CVEs right here. As a developer, I can go in and see which ones I'm being affected by because we've actually highlighted it. And also, too, what we've also done is I can go look in here and I can see any of these CVEs that I have, and it'll tell me here is the public source information. Here's the research materials on it. and what I need to do. So as a developer, I have all the information that I need right here to go attack it and actually do it and fix this, or find out whether or not I'm really truly being affected. And if you look here, by the way, this actually happens to be a 6th level transitive dependency. 6th level transitive dependency. Think about that. That is insane. Now, on top of that, we also have other tool sets that you can look at, right? So in this case, the other things we have too is that I could show you in this case, we also have our CLI tool, which I'm going to be sharing right here. Let me show you. So we could actually do contextual analysis via our CLI. Here I'm doing a JF audit. I can also go in here and look at things. I can scan things like jar files and WAR files or whatnot. We even, this is something, it's just something to show, by the way, but we also bring that same thing to, if you use the Docker desktop, like I'm a Mac guy, I installed Docker on my desktop, it happens to install too. We have a JFrog extension, but this will actually allow you to go in and scan any Docker image that you have stored on your local machine. And that's one of the, this is a tremendous thing that we do. Now let's go back. And let's go back to my window, which is right here. Let me show you this too, right? So the other thing too that we have going on is, like I said, secret detection. So being able to actually go ahead and see the secrets that are, inside here. Here we go. Here's some weak passwords that I'm utilizing. I can show you service level exposures. In this case, like here's Nginx, like I'm doing a CORS wildcard, and we show you exactly in the container where this is happening. We can also go in and show you any application level exposures. Now, I don't think I have any here right now. Here's my software bill of materials that I talked about. Here's every single package, OS, runtime, application, all right here. And I can actually go ahead and export all this information, SPDX or CycloneDX format. And I have a whole series of other things that I can run here as reports, violation, vulnerability, operational risk, and whatnot. My other favorite thing I love to do here, and this is really silly, but just to let you know, if you ever wonder what's in these Docker images, here's your standard registry, right? Here's a standard registry, bunch of obfuscated layers. I can actually show you the contents. Even here's a jar, and I can show you the contents of the jar, and I can even go and look if I wanted to and view these components too. So the thing is that this portion of what we do is very essential to how to utilize the product itself. But saying that, I want to show you a couple other things because, yeah, this is great. This is an immediacy thing. We're actually looking at this here saying this image has all these issues. I can do something about it. But think about that. I just knocked your remediation time down from 292, right, down to under, say, 40. Under 40, 50 CVEs you got to research, but the data is given to the actual developer. Now, saying this too is, also understanding not only what is currently being affected by that single instance, right, that single component that you're looking at, but also too, does it affect other things? Like one of the other questions I ask, like here's that same Docker image we were just discussing, right? Once again, here's all my obfuscated image layers. But if you follow some of our best practices, one of the things I love to show people, and this is just a side little note, I love this feature, is I always ask customers, if we're trying to fix something like this Docker application right here, and then you put 152 actually into production and it's acting terrible, and you get addressed from a security side or from even a production or a any sort of like performance or support or whatever, I always ask what version, in this case, I'm hosting a Node application and a Gradle app, what version am I running? And if you've ever done this, and this is the part, by the way, where the guy is like, hey, my root cause analysis is amazing. Here's my Docker container, here's my Node front end, and my Java backend. We also give you the ability to even diff between applications at this layer. But the reason why I'm showing you this is because that same Docker image that I evaluated with our advanced security, here it is here. But what if I want to focus on what matters? In this case, maybe the application layer, and maybe the Node front end is giving me the most problems. Well, I can click on here, by the way, and I can show you that we went from the Docker image to the actual application itself, right? This is the Node front end I'm hosting. And I have all the information on how it was created. I can look at it. I can look at what it is and its dependencies. I can see its permissions. I talked about metadata properties before. here's those metadata properties, and I can go in and add whatever I want. Like I can say perform, and I could say bad, right? Or something like that, or give it a number, or whatever. But I can query based on, perform equals bad. And if it doesn't, I can say, but if perform equals good, maybe utilize that. But check this out. This is super cool. So what we have right here is the fact that I can show you the build that created it, and I can show you the build that used it, right? So here's every container that's ever used it. But let's go ahead and look at the build, right? So now I'm going to go look at the build. So the thing is, I'm showing you is that giving you the awareness to see here's what was created, but here was used to create it, and say accepts 1.38. I'm just going to grab this library. Is terrible. You're researching it, and as a security team, you're like, you know what? We got to notify every other team that uses this. How do you figure that out? And that's also a problem with a lot of companies. But check this out. I can show you all 105 builds and projects that have ever used it, right? These are all some of the things that you can do. And the thing is that with our X-ray product, being able to evaluate all this information is done through a multiple, different ways. We have contextual analysis, service exposures, and whatnot. And you can build policies where you can take actions on security, licensing, and operational risk. And the thing is the actions you can take really dictate, what you can do. So you can go ahead and look at the severities, the CVSS scores, and whatnot. But you can do things like trigger a webhook or email people. You can create JIRA tickets. You can block downloads. Now, this is essential. Remember I talked about 0-day with our X-ray product. One of the cool features is because you own it, right? And say you have 1,000 developers and all these developers are using Artifactory for those third-party transitive dependencies. One of the key features here is that there's a new 0-day. You can block it immediately so it can't be used. We also have the ability to pre-evaluate binaries. This is huge. Remember we talked about, this is actually facing issues when it's inside your environment. But we've designed Artifactory to say you request a new library, you do npm install blah, or pip install blah, or whatever, or Rust or Cargo, or whatever. It'll go get those third-party transitive dependencies and all of its friends. It'll bring it into Artifactory, evaluate it with X-ray. If it meets your criteria as a corporation, it will release it to the developers so that you can use it. So this is a way for you to preliminarily stop it before it gets in, basically stopping the enemy at the gate before it gets inside your organization. We also do things such as fail build, but my favorite is this. This is a cool feature. Now I got to talk about it, and I am taking time out of this talk to discuss this. We have grace period. What this means is to say you have 10 developers working on something, and we'll just say Tom, the developer, goes ahead and brings in a library, doesn't bother checking or anything. He puts it into the code. Everybody does a pull down, and now you have 9 other developers with broken code because we're not allowing them to use it because we actually had the evaluation say this library was terrible, right? Well, grace period says notify all the developers that are utilizing this or the ones that are doing it that this library has a threat and they have X number of days to fix it. Why is this important? Because maybe Tom is going to feel pressure on getting the builds back up and working because everybody's failed and sitting around and waiting. This says allow those developers to keep going, but this gives them time to go ahead and find the proper solution. So instead of a knee-jerk reaction, please go in there and find the appropriate fix. So these are kind of things that we're bringing to the table. It's a myriad of different security offerings that can really be molded and managed into the way your organization operates. Now, this is about us, but let me show you something really cool. Oops, and I just shut my, I accidentally just shut my my webinar talk. Give me a second here. Let's go back and bring that up. That was pretty awkward. Let's go in and let's go back to presenter view for a minute. There we go. And the reason why is that all that amazing data that I showed you is also available here. And it means is we also integrate our X-ray data into AWS Security Hub. This is a game changer. We have plenty of talks about how to use and utilize us in environments, whatever. But this is cool because what we've done is we've taken all the Artifactory and X-ray components. We actually have the integration that puts all that data into AWS. So if you are managing and maintaining the cloud, yes, you can go to us to find all that extracted information. But We get vulnerability information through AWS Hub, so you can have it there. You get all the data from our JFrog research team. It also has all the contextualization and prioritization values so that you can go ahead and have a better posture inside of AWS. And it also automates the workflows, right? So the mean time to remediation for SOAR. So all you have to do is just go in and take a look, and you'll find the JFrog X-Ray Security Hub integration. It's a Lambda, right? So you just go ahead and do that. Follow the instructions. But once you do, you can see that you have all the information readily available to you as an organization, and you get all the data that we possess, meaning that you can also now centralize this. So you not only have to inside of Artifactory and X-Ray and our entire suite, but now you can actually go ahead and address it here too. I'm going to take some time now because my next thing is just to let you know. We have a ton of resources. We have a very symbiotic relationship with AWS. We do a lot of stuff together. I do a lot of talks with them and a lot of public things like reInvent and whatnot. But these are some of the things that JFrog coincides with. On top of that, we have our resources, our JFrog Academy. We have webinars. There's the AWS workshops. If you're interested in using us too, by the way, you can actually purchase us in the marketplace. So there's a lot of these things that we have in terms of how our product line works with AWS in long term. And I just want to say thank you. But before I say thank you, I am going to go ahead and take a look and see if there's any questions. Stop the screen sharing.
Hey, Bill, it's looked like we've got a couple questions so far.
Sure.
So we'll just take them straight from the top. So can you change the severity in X-ray manually? So if it comes in high, can I change it to medium?
So you actually have the ability to go in, and we have things called ignore rules, right? So there might be there's a couple of different ways to go in and actually change. You can't really change the severity, but you can write rules to go ahead and apply severity, which actually you can change severity, but it's only inside of our system, right? It doesn't apply to the outside world, but yes, you can assign a custom issue, it's also called. And a custom issue can also be time resolved. So you can say only carry it up for X period of time because you probably don't want to have that go on forever.
Awesome.
Let's see.
It looks like our second and final question so far is, would like to learn more about X-ray on-demand scan.
Absolutely. So you actually can go ahead and there's a couple of different ways to do this, right? So if you just type, one of the ways that you can do this is, I'll just show you actually. What I have here is a scan right here, right? Where I have JFrog scan. I'm scanning a jar, and it's going to go ahead and download our little indexer and do the job it needs to do. But this is the way you can kind of do it too. There's a bunch of information, and as I mentioned, I'll just do a quick clear. Our JFrog X-ray tool actually has a tremendous amount of things that you can do. So you can audit specific types, right? So over here I had I'm just doing an npm audit here, but I can do things like JFrog audit, if I can spell today, npm, because I already know this is an npm resource, but it's going to go ahead and it's going to pull that information, build a dependency graph and a tree for me. So this allows you to do things. But JFrog scan is amazing. So this allows you to scan the local file system. You can also use the API. And what's nice is that you can you get that information inside of let me see here. I'll go ahead and share this really fast. You can actually see where we have our on-demand scan list, and you can actually go ahead too. And here's that jar that I was just actually scanning, and I can go in here. Besides looking, at the actual UI, I can actually desktop. I can also see here, right? So here's my on-demand scan. So if I wanted to go ahead and dive in and actually have more information, and by the way too, this allows you to go in and see the severity levels, the impact graph on where it is, and also to, like I said, all the remediation information. So this is a way for you to do this. It's a nice, easy way. And like I said, even includes things like my favorite, operational risk. Here you go. Here's a whole bunch of components that are operationally risked. And of course, here's licensing. And even to, in this case, this happens to come from a jar, right? So I can even break down the contents of the jar. And remember I talked about somebody asked, If you look here, I can do assign custom issue, and that will jump me over to the assign custom issue screen, which you can't see because unfortunately it's going to pop up over there. But it allows you to go in and reassign.
I think we've just received a related question, but can you define custom rules and patterns for secret scanning and IAC scanning?
Right now, it's blanketed. We are going to be in the future probably creating more granular controls. The controls themselves are actually associated to the indexed resource area. So I'll just show you once again. Here we'll go in. I'll just show you my SAS. Here we go. So in this case, when it comes to X-ray, if I go to indexed resources, and if I go ahead and I look up something like Docker, we'll say in this case, if you look here, you can see where currently right now, this is where you go in and define, that here's a contextual analysis, secret detection, services, and application. But we will have more granular things coming in the future. I only have about a minute left, unfortunately. I know we have it the whole time, but I only have about a minute left before I have to go run to my other building.
Perfect. Does this work in Azure as well as AWS?
Absolutely. We are multi-cloud. We are actually, so the thing is AWS, Azure, GCP. We actually help even synchronize between Azure and AWS and GCP, right? We have customers that are using all various providers, and this allows you to have that same set of tools, non-dependent on whether you're even your own DC or not.
Awesome. Well, Bill, I know you've got less than a minute now. So is there anything you'd like to say before we close things out?
We are doing our Swamp Up conference. It's in September. Just go to our website. I'll be actually one of the speakers there. We'll be doing it in San Jose, California. That's where I live. It just happens to be serendipitous this year. It's in my town. But it's awesome. We'll be doing a lot of new discoveries. There's a lot of good training. We have best practices. We actually have a training day and we have our conference day. Please feel free to reach out to us. We would love to see people in person. I love meeting everybody in person, especially now that we can. Last year was our first back to public one. 2 years of doing our Swamp Up conference virtually was nuts. But I'm happy. I would love to see any of you who are here watching. I would love to see you people in person. It makes me happy.
Awesome. Well, Bill, thank you so much for joining us once again here on Techstrong Learning. If you need to go ahead and drop off, feel free. Cody,
as always, congratulations, number one, by the way, on your recent marriage. Rock on, my friend. And I want to thank everybody for attending today. And as always, Cody, you bring a smile to my face too, buddy. Be cool.
Awesome. It's always good catching up, Bill. Awesome. Oh, so we're just going. Oh, you got a question?
Actually, hold on here. I'll just do. Here's some. Actually, by the way, here's some extra links just so you guys have them. That's our link also to our Swamp Up. Here's a link to our academy. Here's another one for you. Hold on. I love giving you guys all the stuff that you guys want. Here we go. Here's our research page. Let's do that. And last but not least, also just so you have it, I have it here somewhere. Thank you, Cody.
Awesome.
Rock on, everybody. Be safe, be wonderful, be well. Appreciate you all. Thank you.
Of course. Thanks for being here, Bill. All of these links that he just dropped in the chat, if you're viewing this on demand, there is no chat. So these will be found in the in the handout section. So feel free to grab those there.
Cheers, Cody.
Awesome.
Thanks, everybody.
I'll see you around. So to everyone who's still with us, thank you so much for being here. I do just want to remind you that our session was recorded. If you'd like to rewatch or maybe share with a friend, you will be receiving an email with a link to access this recording on demand. You can also find it living on the DevOps website at devops.com/webinars. And be sure to look in the on-demand section where it'll be there waiting for you shortly. The 4 winners of our $25 Amazon gift card drawing, they are Philip C., Laura S., Brad B., and Lucas K. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Keep an eye on your inbox to claim that gift card. It should make its way to you in the next 48 hours. If you don't happen to see that email, check your spam folder just in case it happens to be filtered out. I'd like to thank AWS and JFrog for sponsoring our program today. And to everyone who is here with us still, thanks so much for being here. We really appreciate your time, and we do just want to hear a little bit of feedback from you. So if you don't mind sticking around, as soon as we close out, there'll be a survey that pops up. Let us know what you thought about this program today, or of course, if you have any recommendations for upcoming programs, we want to hear those. Either way, we do hope to see everyone at a future Techstrong learning experience. Have a great rest of your day, and you may now disconnect. Thanks, everyone.